Something just happened in the studio just now that is a perfect example of what this episode's about. And I need to tell you before I get into the intro that I was going to do, I need to tell you what it is. So we just recorded only about 5 minutes of the podcast episode. And then Jay, our producer, who's just next door, just ran in and was like, Heather, I'm so sorry. We need to stop the episode. I know you're like mid-flow. I know you're talking really deeply, but the lighting isn't right. Like something's wrong with the lighting. And to be fair, it is really important that you get this stuff right. And so I'm glad Jay stopped me 5 minutes in, and it was only 5 minutes in. But the reason that's an important story that I tell you is this episode is all about something that's very deep and personal to me. It's a philosophy, which is Stoicism. And a huge part of the Stoic philosophy is when things go wrong, how we use that to our advantage. And it's like, there's a great book that we'll get into called The Obstacle is the Way. But The Obstacle is the Way essentially says, when something happens that feels a little bit frustrating, it might be traffic, it might be you get 5 minutes into the podcast episode and the lighting's wrong and you have to stop mid-thought and start again. What do you do? Like, how do you respond? Do you think, oh, fuck's sake, I was really in it there. I was like ready to go. We were really enjoying it. Now we've got to start again. Or do you immediately say to yourself, okay, that was a slight obstacle, but this is the way, like this is the reason. And my brain straight away went to, yeah, that intro wasn't that good. The one that I just filmed, it wasn't that good. And I was getting a bit lost. I wasn't really happy with it. And now I've got the opportunity to do it again. And that's exactly what this episode is all about things that are outside of your control. And how I've used Stoic philosophy for the last 7 or 8 years now. I've been like deeply sort of ingrained in researching, understanding, reading, and putting into practice Stoic philosophy into my day-to-day life. It has changed my business, my leadership, my career success, absolutely my relationships and money that comes into my life, the success that I have. I could 100% pin everything back to the decision I made to start building and understanding Stoic philosophy. And so we're going to go through that today, a bit of a beginner's guide, a whistle-stop tour to Stoicism. Like, you may have heard the word before, you may have seen it online, you may have seen people explain things through the lens of Stoicism, but like, how does the ancient Greeks 3,000 years ago, how does that even begin to, how do I even begin to like lay that over my working life, my day-to-day life, and how is it relevant for me today? Now, I want you to picture this. I'm 23 years old. I live in Chorlton, which is like a little suburb on the outskirts of Manchester. I live with my friends. I've just come out of a relationship that was very rocky. The last couple of years of that relationship, just both of us were deeply unhappy. It was just draining our mental health, our physical health. And so now I'm 23 years old. I've moved in with my friends. And I'm starting to kind of find a little bit of a lease of life again, but still feeling very lost. And at that age, I remember every single person around me was in a relationship. Like, all my friends were in relationships. I was the only one. We'd go to like friends barbecues and dinners and birthday parties and blah, 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 nights out. And everyone was in a couple. And I remember crying so many times when I got home after those events, thinking, it's me, like I'm the problem. I'm the one that sticks out. I'm the one that isn't kind of following this traditional conforming path. Like, everyone's been together for years and years and I'm the only one that's single and I'm lost. And I also felt lost because in my career, like, I did business management as a degree, which in hindsight was incredible. But at the time I felt this real insecurity about the fact that it was so general. So I picked business management because I just wanted like a generalistic degree that didn't kind of box me in, because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had this thought when I was like 16, 17, that I really wanted to be a lawyer. I was convinced I wanted to do law. And then one day I decided to sign up for some work experience, and I went and did like a week's work experience during the summer holidays with this law firm down in the Cotswolds who just would happen to take in interns. And I hated it. And I just really disliked it. I found it really boring. I really struggled with kind of all the things that I had to do. And I spoke to some of the like newly qualified lawyers there who had been kind of working towards this for years and years. And I just thought that reality is just not for me. So I did something really general. So when I turned 17, 18 and you pick your degree, I was like, let's pick the one thing that doesn't box me in, business management. And then off the back of that, I went into, as you know, like Harrods assistant manager role. I then went into a PA role. I then joined a startup, Go Proposal, where I kind of joined as like very much a generalist. I was doing bits of social media, kind of helping out in the support team, as you do with kind of tiny startups that, you don't really have these very specific roles. And so there I am, 23 years old, just feeling this sense of like, I don't have anything figured out. And I know in hindsight, like I've just turned 31, and I know in hindsight that 23 is so young, and you absolutely should not have it all figured out. There is no way. I wish I could go back to that version of me and be like, just make more mistakes and just be more, frivolous and silly, and stop trying so hard to box yourself in and kind of define yourself and define your career, because you don't need to. I'd started going to the gym. So I'd gone through this breakup and started for the very first time in my life. Like, I was never someone who was into fitness. I was never someone who was, like, the gym wasn't a thing that we did with family or anything growing up. Fitness, sports wasn't really a thing. But I'd gone through this breakup and I found the gym as almost like an outlet. And I just used to go to the classes at Pure Gym, big up Pure Gym. Anyone who disses Pure Gym now, I'm like, no, we don't get to do that, because a 5 kg dumbbell is 5 kg everywhere. So I was going to these classes at Pure Gym. I'd got up this particular morning at like 5 a.m. to go and get one of the first trams that went into Manchester City Centre to go to the gym before work. And it's chucking it down. Like, the rain is just hammering down. And I've got my raincoat on. I was listening to music. And I remember stopping just before I got to the actual tram itself. At Chorlton Tram Stop, there's like a bridge that you can kind of like look over at the trams just before you go down the stairs. So I get to this bridge, which is just before like Chorlton Tram Stop, where you can look over at the trams. And I remember just looking over at the trams thinking, I feel so lost. I feel so disconnected from the world, from friends, from life. I feel like I'm just living life on autopilot and kind of hoping that opportunities will come my way and just hoping that I will figure it out. And I just felt lost. Like, lost is the only way I can describe it. And then I came across a guy online. It's this guy called Ryan Holiday, who I still follow now and think he's one of the best influencers in the world. I'll have talked about him before at some point on this podcast, and this will not be the last time I mention his name. So he is essentially like a modern day writer. He's an author. He's an influencer. He has this huge kind of blog that has hundreds of thousands of subscribers. And he writes about Stoicism. And he uses these concepts that the ancient Greeks used and applies them on kind of modern day principles of life and work. And I found Ryan Holiday, I think it was a podcast that I was first listening to where he was a guest on the podcast. And I remember thinking, this explains, he was talking about like not feeling as though you have any sense of control or agency over the things that you're doing, and needing to kind of latch onto this idea of, okay, we don't control what happens to us, but we can control how we respond. And I remember feeling as though, like, going through this breakup, I was so angry and frustrated at so many things that were kind of out of my control. Like, so many things that, being angry and frustrated at those things was never going to change anything. I just felt so lost that I'd kind of channeled everything into this anger and just felt bitter. And I'd go to these like friend barbecues and just feel bitter at like, everyone's so happy and I'm not happy, and that's their fault for some reason because they're settling and I'm not. And I just felt this sense of like bitterness. So I came across Stoicism via Ryan Holiday. And the very first thing I did was started reading a book called The Daily Stoic. And I subscribed to his newsletter, which is also called The Daily Stoic, where he sends one kind of bit of Stoic wisdom your way every single morning. And now, if you have any experience with Stoicism, everyone tends to think that it's something that is show no emotion. Like, the word Stoic, we've come to associate with they show no emotion whatsoever and they're kind of like a cold Stoic person. But that's almost the opposite of what Stoicism is. So Stoicism is feel all the emotions, feel it. We are human beings. Like, we're not meant to be logical, cold, stark. We feel the feelings. But the difference is with Stoicism is you have to separate the things you can and can't control. You have to separate things that happen to you that are very much outside of your control with how you respond to them. So for example, traffic. Like, you cannot control traffic. You cannot control when you're sat there in the morning, the traffic is going, it's so annoying, it's adding 20 minutes, half an hour to your commute. It's frustrating, okay? But you've kind of got two options. And this goes back to the story we just told about with the studio. Like, you've got two options, which is sit there and just get more and more pissed off at the cars, at the traffic, even though you're also part of the problem, which I always forget when I'm in traffic. I'm like, I am actually also the traffic. But you could just get more and more annoyed at this situation that's completely outside of your control. Or you can bring it internally and go, look, okay, this is a frustrating situation. We're not going to take that away. But is there anything I can do about it? Maybe not right now, but potentially in the future. Like, could I ask to move my working hours an hour earlier so I could kind of avoid it? Could I get the train in? Do we need to, I don't know, this one's a bit more unrealistic, but like, do we need to move closer to the office? Do I need to get a job closer to home? Is the traffic affecting me negatively that much that I'm not willing to put up with it anymore? And so I'm going to channel this feeling of frustration into something helpful that is move job, move house, or get the train, just something. But also what Stoicism teaches you is in that moment when that traffic is happening, if we go back to that principle of the obstacle is the way, it's like maybe, just maybe, you're supposed to be slowed down. Maybe, just maybe, this 40 minutes in the morning that you are stuck in that traffic, this hour in the morning that you are stuck in that traffic, as frustrating as it is, if it's unavoidable, maybe that hour is supposed to be for you. Maybe it's that home feels a bit overwhelming or feels a bit stressful, or you need that hour to separate your home life and your work life. Maybe it's that you need the hour to listen to podcasts. Maybe this is like your safe space where you get to listen to podcasts on the way into work. And if you didn't have that space, maybe you would feel differently about life. Like maybe you wouldn't, you need a bit of a commute. I actually, I used to love my commute into work and this is when my commute was a bit longer, so it's quite short now. But when it was longer and it was more like 45 minutes, I used to use that time. It was like the only time of the day that I got truly to myself. Even though I was in a crowd of people, I got truly to myself, and I would listen to podcasts, like I said, listen to audiobooks, listen to music, like catch up on all the new music that I loved and kind of didn't get a chance to listen to at any other point in the day. I would sometimes even do emails so that when I got into work, my inbox wasn't as hectic and I could kind of just like sit down and work on and do the working on work. And maybe that's something that your work will let you do, like use your commute time as actual work time and then maybe take half an hour off at the end of the day. And most Stoic teachings can be traced back to a guy called Epictetus. So there's a few different Greek philosophers. Marcus Aurelius, who you may have heard of, is kind of like the main focus of the film Gladiator. But Epictetus, and I'm reading this off my phone, guys, so I don't get this wrong, but Epictetus was a former slave who became one of the most important Stoic philosophers. And he built his entire teaching around one distinction, which is some things are up to us, aka our judgments, our choices, and our reactions. But some things are not. For example, other people, outcomes, reputation, the economy, other people's opinion of you. Nearly every modern piece of leadership advice about focusing on what you can control traces back to this one idea. And it was 2,000 years before management theory even existed. But what's important to know is that Stoicism has had a really big resurgence in the last decade. So over the last sort of 10 years, especially with Ryan Holiday kind of becoming a more prominent figure and writing more books, he's got The Obstacle is the Way, Ego is the Enemy, where he really talks about this suppression of our difficult reactions to emotions. And now it is one of the most quoted philosophies amongst like athletes and leaders and CEOs because it is all about this. It's essentially emotional intelligence. It's the very early stems of what emotional intelligence is and means. And if you look at emotional intelligence today, we define it as understanding your emotions, feeling your emotions, and then what do we respond in that emotion? Like that's step 2 of emotional intelligence. And we know from study after study that emotional intelligence is one of the biggest factors that will determine your career success. And therefore, the Stoic philosophy that kind of surrounds this emotional intelligence understanding is so important for us to know. Now, there's a couple of real life examples of how Stoicism just shows up in my every single day. We fail all the time. Like every single day we are failing, especially in this busy, busy time where we're launching Custard, like we're just about to move into the 3rd cohort of Custard. We've obviously launched the podcast. This is what are we on, episode 12 now, I think? This is episode 12 of the podcast. We are still running Fresh Leadership World incredibly well. This week alone, I've got some work with a brilliant company, Scene Studios, who I've worked with twice now. They're an amazing agency in Shoreditch, and I'm doing these workshops with them. But we just have so much going on and so much newness and so much building. And when we do that, we've got workshops, webinars, like all of it. when we do that, we're constantly testing new things. We're experimenting with new things, whether it's experimenting with AI, whether it's experimenting with like new processes for how we connect Zoom up to our registration process. And almost every time we try something new, we fail. Something goes wrong. And I've had jobs where in the past where when I failed at something, for example, like booked the wrong train or spent money that I spent by accident, on a piece of software where I'd forgot to cancel it, like small day-to-day mistakes that all of us make. And my boss at the time got really angry and like started, getting really frustrated with me. And that just closes you off into a box. And so I always wanted to be the manager that allowed failure to perpetuate through what we do. I wanted to be the manager that if a small mistake was made, of course, we pull each other up on it, we help each other through it, we coach each other through it. But it isn't this kind of like huge catastrophic event. And mistakes are just part of this concept of like, you have to, things that are outside of your control. So we have controlled our input. We have controlled the energy and effort that we've put in, and we have controlled an experiment. We've tried to do our best with this experiment. We can't control the outcome. We can't control how people are going to respond to it. We can't control even the weather. And so if we start to get angry and frustrated about those things, you can see how that's just going to perpetuate this culture of like, we can't make mistakes. We can't find those obstacles that end up being the way. And Stoicism can get really tough when it comes to work because it requires us all the time to take like a really high level of ownership and a really high level of just, I will continue to accept that I could have done something wrong here. So for example, like we can't, you can't prepare, say you're preparing like a client presentation or a client pitch and they say no. Okay, so what we can do is go, the client, they've not got much money or they don't care that much or they can't see the value in what we do. Like we could outsource that blame because it's so much easier to. Or we can allow ourselves to feel that frustration and then go, okay, what could I have done that would have set us up in better stead and therefore will improve how this works next time? What could I have done that makes sure that next time the team does it or someone who's more of an expert in it does it, or maybe I needed to brush up on my presentation skills. Maybe I rushed it a little bit. Maybe I need to go and ask that client for deeper feedback so that the next time I like run through this process, it's even better. That requires such a high level of uncomfortable ownership to be able to be the person who's willing to say, maybe it was me. Like maybe I did do something that could have been better. And let me tell you, as a business owner, it is one of the best, most important questions I can ever ask myself is, but how could I have influenced the negative outcome of this situation? Like, for example, we ran a webinar a couple of months ago and we did it for the first time on YouTube Live. And if anyone came to this webinar, tragic. So we ran it on YouTube Live. And what I did, normally when I run webinars on Zoom, I'll join Zoom like 5 to 10 minutes before just to double check my mic, check my camera, check everything's working. And then I normally will like come off of Zoom so that it doesn't pick it up on the recording and then rejoin like 1 minute before. So I'd thought that YouTube was the same thing. I joined the YouTube Live. What I didn't realize is, it actually kickstarts the YouTube Live. So all these thousands of people that are signed up get the notification to say the live is starting when it's not really. I'm just testing my mics and camera. But then what I did is I panicked. And so I set up my mic, set up my camera, panicked. I was like, shit, I better end this YouTube Live. And then it ended the live for good. So I could no longer go back on that YouTube Live and like service and deliver that workshop to the thousands of people that were registered. And we had to panic send everyone an email saying, here's the new link, we're so sorry. And it tanked the viewership. So I think we had, I can't remember the stats exactly, but I want to say we had like 2,000 people registered. Normally out of 2,000 people, you get about a 50% show up rate. So let's say 1,000. On that webinar, we only had about 300-400 people show up because we messed up with the link. And it's so easy, like me and Levi could have cried. I think we probably did have a bit of a tear. But me and Levi have two options. We could have got really annoyed with ourselves. We could have allowed that frustration to perpetuate. We could have been pissed off that, we'd spent all these weeks advertising this webinar, sending this webinar to people. Or we could go, look, it's not the end of the world. No one has died. There is a lesson in this somewhere. Where's the gift? Where is the gift? And me and Levi say this to each other a lot, jokingly now. We're like, where is the gift in this when something goes wrong? Because the obstacle is the way. Like, there's always a way through it, and there's always a reason why that negative thing has happened to you. And for us at that time, like with the webinar, it was just that YouTube Live like wasn't the right platform for what we were trying to do. You couldn't send links, and we always send people to links for like assets and stuff, for spreadsheets, whatever, throughout the webinar. You couldn't do it. And so it was the gift was just, you need to go back to Zoom, girls. You need to stick to what you know, like you need to go back to doing it. It also allowed us to work on the process of like our recording, because we knew in that point that the recording was going to be really important. So it allowed us to kind of take a step back and go, okay, how do we make sure that as many people watch the recording of this as possible? And now we have a recording process set up where we tag people if they came, if they didn't, did they get the recording? Did they get a reminder? Whatever. And the other thing that we had to take accountability for was the fact that we were just rushing a bit. We'd planned to like do a webinar every 4 weeks, do an online workshop, and we realized we just didn't have the capacity for it. And so now we only do it every 6 weeks, because it just requires, it is quite intricate. Like, there's a lot of technical things that can go wrong. There's a lot of people giving up their time and space to come and watch you. And you need to give it the time and energy that it deserves to get it right. Another example, okay, this one still stings a bit because it was very recently, was when we opened Custard up to the first 50 businesses. So this was at the end of June. Well, it wasn't that recent, but it feels recent to me. We opened up to 50 businesses. We got the first 50 in very fast, like really fast. And we were celebrating. We were like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then we realized about 45 minutes in that the businesses that were signing up were skipping the second step of the process. So the second step of the process is to put their card details in. Now, you do get a 14-day free trial, but you have to put your card details in at the beginning. And the businesses weren't doing that. So they were essentially skipping that second step and going straight into the product. So we then had to go back to everyone and be like, please, can you put your card details in to enable the billing, blah, blah, blah. Barely any of them did, obviously, because they were already hot. They were a warm lead. They were ready to sign up. And by the time we'd got to them and said, please, can you put your card details in? It's another action to get them to do. And so it was quite a difficult one. And it was just a massive mistake. And we'd gone from this huge high of like, oh my God, we've got these businesses in so quickly, to this new low of shit. No wonder it happened so fast, because we removed one of the steps of the process that would have made it a bit harder and a bit more of a like end game choice for people to sign up. And so, yeah, that was a tough one. Obviously, you step back from it, you give yourself a bit of an hour to like wallow in self-pity. And then you step back from it and you go, okay, what has this taught us? What are we building off the back of this to make sure that this never happens again, but actually to make sure that was the strongest decision we ever made. That was such a happy accident, because we can now learn that we now have a cancellation process in place. We now have these like step 1, step 2 strike processes in place that make it super clear when people sign up. And it's just all going back to the obstacle is the way, and ego is the enemy. We all have this big, big, juicy ego. And something that the Stoics believe is that your ego will get in the way of all the greatness you deserve in life. I definitely know that, like, I guess for the first sort of 25 years of my life, my ego emotion around things like, I guess even like jealousy, just all that stuff that you feel when you're younger and a bit unsure about the world, just dictated everything that I did. Like, it dictated where I lived. It dictated what I spent my money on. It dictated what I wanted to do as a job, because I had this ego that was like, if I work for the businesses that have cool brand names, or I don't know, go to the uni that seems fun and cool, instead of stepping back and going, but what do I actually want to do? And that ego just will rule and dictate your life so much if you're not careful. So to round up this episode, I'm going to give you some habits, kind of some daily things of how you can start to practice Stoicism and use it day to day. So the very first thing that I'd say it's helped me, and you'll have heard this before, is journaling. Now, journaling, I think, has been used a lot in like the wellness space, but journaling for the Stoics was, Marcus Aurelius used to journal every single day. And if you haven't already, go and read the book, Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, because he is every single day, he's writing down just a few sentences on how he feels about life, how he feels about work. And inside those journals, you start to see like the real deep feeling and emotion that human beings have. And the benefit of a journal, so all you need is a notebook. It doesn't need to be any like branded thing, fancy thing, literally just a notebook and a pen next to your bed. And just for 5 minutes before you go to bed, Write down how today felt. Write down, and you can't censor yourself. What I mean is, this journal has to be seen by no one but you. This is the only place you cannot censor your thoughts. You have to write down, like, how did you feel? Were you jealous? Were you pissed off? Were you afraid? Were you angry at something? Did you feel sad? Did you feel like you were comparing yourself to someone? And the reason that journal helps so much is, for me, like, it helps me to almost put my daily thoughts, things that normally just run free inside my head and kind of run riot and make me feel like crap. I write them down, and you can almost read them with a fresh brain and go, I shouldn't feel that way. That feels like I'm overthinking that thing, or it feels as though my brain is kind of taking this thing out of proportion. And actually, when I write it down, it's not as big or dramatic as I thought it was. And it really helped me with lots of feelings of anxiety as well. I don't struggle too much with anxiety nowadays, but when I very first left corporate and set up my business, I did. Like, it was when I was first kind of becoming someone online, like a public face, a public figure. And I was showing my ideas to the world. I was sharing things with the world. People, exes were seeing your videos, friends were seeing your videos. And it requires you to push through a lot of walls of like cringe and embarrassment. And I did a lot of journaling at that point because I just felt the feeling of anxiety a lot. It kind of ruled a lot of my day. And so by journaling, I could write the things down that I felt, and I almost would see it as a different person. So I'd read it back and think, okay, so posting that video made you feel insecure because you've always been embarrassed about this thing, and now you're finally sharing it out loud and your friends might see it. And you read it and you go, okay, I can deal with that. That's okay. Whereas your brain will just run riot on the thing, but your hand and the physical act of writing it down is really helpful. So the second habit that I would say is so the Stoics are big on presence, like being present, kind of being in the moment. And the modern day version of that for me is just not being on your phone, not being on your laptop, practicing active listening, a rule that I have had since I was 23 years old. So I've had this rule in my household for the past 7 years, is no phones in the bedroom. No phones are allowed in the bedroom. They're not even allowed through the door passage. My bedroom is like my safe space, my cozy space. The phones get charged downstairs at night. You leave it. We have a cutoff for digital devices at about 9:30. We leave our phone charging downstairs, and then you go upstairs and it's like all those beautiful moments that you share, maybe with your partner, or if you live with friends or have kids and family, all those beautiful moments of like brushing your teeth together and like recapping the day and laughing about things that you did, and just, I don't know, like getting ready, doing your skincare routine, getting in bed. All of those things will be taken away from you. That is my favorite part of the day. Is going to bed, basically. But no, my favorite part of the day is like those moments before bed, because it's so still. There is nothing that is stealing away my attention and my focus. There's no email, there's no WhatsApp group chat popping off, there's nothing. And if you have your phone with you, if you're on your phone while you're brushing your teeth, you're scrolling before you go to bed, all those moments are taken away. All those opportunities for like stillness and presence are gone. So charge your phone downstairs. And then the final habit, again, this is a before bed habit that I have, is reading. Is just reading. So journaling, I actually don't journal every single day now. When you start out, I would recommend doing it every day just to get into a really good habit of it. But now I only journal when I feel like I need to. So I probably only do it like once every couple of weeks when I feel as though I've had a bit of a stressful day. I just need to like let out some emotion through my pen. But reading has changed my life. I mean, I've been a reader forever. I've read books forever, but reading is like, how do I even begin? Like, I could do a whole episode on this about this myself. Like, it's just finding these other worlds to get lost in. And I don't mean personal development. Personal development is for the morning. This is for the evening. It's fiction. It's storytelling. It's kind of getting lost in fantasy worlds and psychological thrillers and twists and tales. And like, my favorite book, I'm going to say it's my favorite book of all time, is Daphne du Maurier, Rebecca. And it's just like a tale of, it's all based in a house. It's all based in one house called Mandalay. And every page is like a poem. Every page is like a story in itself. And, you could read the book 10 times over and still find new amazing things. And it makes me better in life. It makes me more still. It makes me more present. It makes me more grateful. It makes me more creative. But you can't have that habit without kind of having the phone and getting rid of the phone, because reading's hard. Like sometimes reading's crap. Sometimes you've got to like really focus on it to get into a book, and that's okay. But if your phone's sat there winking at you on the desk, on your sideboard next to your bed, it's easier to scroll. Of course it is. Oh, I can't be asked to read today, I'll just have a scroll. Can't be asked to journal. Can't be asked to talk to my partner about the day, so I'll just have a scroll. So all those habits kind of go hand in hand. I would also order the Daily Stoic. That's a really great place to start. It's just one meditation on Stoicism for every single morning. Go and order that book. I would highly recommend that too. So thank you for listening to this episode. This feels like a bit of a deep and personal one. And I could even do a part 2 on Stoicism, because there's so much that I've not even began to touch on. So maybe I'll do a part 2 in a couple of months. Let me know if you want that in the comments. Thank you for being here. This podcast, we are, like I said, on episode 12 now. So we're 3 months in. It has just, the reception from you guys has been incredible. Like I cannot actually get over how much you want to listen, how much you're requesting things, you're emailing in, you're commenting, and all of that helps us to reach more people too. So wherever you're listening, if it's Spotify, Amazon, Apple, YouTube, wherever you're listening or watching us, please just hit the like button, the follow button, the subscribe button, and drop a comment. Let me know. Like a lot of the episodes that I've got planned over the next few weeks come from someone commented on a video or commented on a Spotify episode and said, please, can you do an episode on this thing? And I'm doing them now. Like I'm making sure that we get all those in. If you've got a specific thing you want an episode on, please just drop a comment on this episode. I promise I read every single one. And it really just helps us to reach new people too. So I'm so grateful for that. We're also going to do an episode in a few weeks' time that is purely Q&A. So we have been getting lots of emails from you guys. The email address is hello@theboardroompodcast.com. We've been getting lots of emails with people with very specific dilemmas in their leadership role at work, whereby, they've just laid out that dilemma, and I'm going to sit and go through all of them in one episode so we can really get into like the nitty gritty of day-to-day things and how I would overcome some of those things. And so please email in with your dilemma, with your question, hello@theboardroompodcast.com. And there is a high chance that we will get to your dilemma when we get into the episode. And if not, then we'll probably cover it in the next one. But that's all. Thank you for being here. I'll see you next week for the next episode of The Boardroom.